Hello, my name is Marian Bayer, and I'm excited and happy to share some of my experiences that I've had with those who have passed on and with one of my spirit guides. A little bit of my background. I have an MBA, a master's in public administration, and I've worked in finance and accounting most of my life, and had no idea that I also had the ability to connect with those in spirit. And I now understand it's not that you have to have a special gift or study forever to have the ability to connect with someone in spirit. We all have that ability. So I'm going to share some of my stories with you, how I got started and started to realize that when we pass on, we do continue. It's not death. It's just moving on to the next experience. We are spirits before we're born here into our body, and when we leave our body, we're spirits. And the whole time that we're here, we're spirits. So, I'd recently moved back to Minnesota and started studying Qigong and energy healing, and started doing energy healing on people. And one day, out of the blue, that's one of my favorite phrases, out of the blue, as I was doing healing on this woman who was on the table, all of a sudden I could see an older woman standing at the end of the table and in the room with us watching this. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm seeing someone. And then this woman started talking to me, and she says, oh, yeah, I'm Carolyn's grandmother. And I'm like, oh boy. So I asked the young lady who was on the table, do you mind if I share something with you? Something's coming to me. And she says, oh, sure. So I said, well, I'm seeing this woman in spirit, and she looks like this. She's about 5'4". She has gray hair. It's kind of the roller set like they used to do or still do. And she's wearing pink, and she says she's your grandmother. And my client said, well, yeah, that's my grandmother. She's with me a lot. And I thought, oh my gosh, you really can see and talk to and hear someone who's in spirit. Her grandmother had died 5 years earlier, but there she was in the room as I was doing energy healing. So that was one of my first big aha moments of this is real, this is true, and it's possible. So from there, I started to study mediumship, started to study psychic development, intuition, and energy healing more. And things just started to blossom and open up for me. Another story that really gave me proof that this is real, I'll tell you about Helen. I felt this spirit around me, and I knew it was a woman. And so I was telling my friend Mary, who's also a massage therapist, and for a couple weeks, I was telling Mary, oh yeah, I felt that lady around me again. And Mary said, well, what's her name? And out of the blue, it just came out, Helen. Her name's Helen. And then I started to doubt, and I thought, oh, am I making that up? Could it really be Helen? Well, I'll just kind of go with it and say it's Helen. But I didn't believe it. In my gut, I didn't believe it. I kept overthinking and doubting it. Well, it was around Halloween time, and I was at the store to get a costume. I like Halloween parties. And there was these big, I thought they were cat eye glasses, and they were like this big, for going to a costume party. I didn't want them. I wasn't interested in buying them, but for some reason I couldn't leave them. I went, walked around the store, and then I was back there looking at these dang glasses, and I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'll get them. And then a couple weeks later, a friend of mine, her name is Gina, she's a medium. I asked Gina if I could sit in on one of the sessions just to practice and learn, observe. And Gina said, let me ask my client. And Gina said, okay, yep, no problem. So it was a Saturday, late Saturday morning. And the client comes, this young lady, in her 30s, And she said, I'd like to talk to my mother. Her mother had passed away a couple of years ago. So I'm sitting there listening, and Gina, my friend who's the medium, is talking with her client, and back and forth, and I thought I had nothing to do with this. I was just this observer of the conversation. And then the hair on the back of my neck started standing up, and this wave of energy came over me. And I looked at the client and I said, what's your mother's name? And she said, Helen. And I'm like, oh my God. I sat back in my chair and the tears just started running down my face. It was such an overwhelming emotional experience, not negative, but just full of energy and aha and insights. And really, could this really be true? No, that couldn't be the Helen that I was talking to. So then I said, I was telling the client, the other day, a couple weeks ago, I just felt compelled to get these glasses. And she's like, oh yeah, my mom, she loved dressing up. She loved parties. She was just loved to be a child at heart. And then I started to describe these glasses. They were big. I called them cat eye glasses. And the client gets out her phone and pulls up a photograph of her mom wearing these big glasses, so similar to the ones I had just bought at Target 2 weeks earlier. I'm like, oh my God, was that Helen nudging me to get these glasses? And I still didn't really believe it. I always, my background of numbers and 1 + 1 = 2 and proof, and this is reality. So I sheepishly said to the client, this word keeps coming to me, butterscotch, butterscotch. Does that have anything to do with your mother? And she said, yeah, my mom loved butter and she loves scotch. I'm like, okay. This has to be her mother that I'm talking to. And we shared a few more bits of information that was coming to me, and she says, yeah, that's my mother. And when she showed me the photograph of her mom, that's the image I could see in my head, and how it felt, her energy field, just lively and like kind of a free spirit and loving and the life of a party. And this woman says, that's exactly, it's as if you've known my mother for years. That's exactly her personality. So I know some of you watching the videos may have your own doubts and talk yourself out of, oh, I had this experience, but maybe it's not true. And you will get the proof you need, and you can ask for it and say, give me proof. I want to get over my doubting this and really believe these experiences or the information that's coming to me. And there isn't one specific way or a type of proof. It's what matters to you. What will be proof for you? And that's what I got for me that day. So it will come. I also want to share another story, and I started doing medium readings, and this was about maybe 5 years ago. And this mother called and asked if she could have a reading because her son had died, and she wanted to there was a couple brothers and sisters, and also the grandmother came. So in my living room there were 6 people all around and wanting to talk to John, this son who had passed. And it wasn't until after the reading that the mother said, oh, and by the way, this is his birthday. So when you said you were available on this day, I thought that was a good sign. I'm like, okay. So we started the reading. I didn't ask the family for any details or any information. And it was really a lovely conversation, emotional and touching. And why I wanted to share this particular one with you is that when John came through and shared some information, it meant something to his sister, one of his sisters, but that his brother couldn't relate to it. Or it was something his mom understood, but it really wasn't meaningful information to his siblings. So get the information. If you have a reading or you're connecting with someone in spirit, just take the information in that they're sharing with you, and if it's meaningful for you, it is, or it might not be. Maybe it's meant for someone else. But this experience, this mediumship reading I gave, really kind of settled it once and for all for me. Even though I was talking with people in spirit, when John came and shared these specific details, it was without a doubt that's who I was talking to. I was talking to the son. I was talking to the brother. This is who was coming through. One example of the information that came, I said right away when the reading started that I'm seeing, John is showing me this, he lived in rural Wisconsin, and sometimes there's a lot of people have deer stands for hunting deer. So I was explaining to the family, this looked like a deer stand, but it was on the ground, so I was confused. It didn't make sense to me. It was a platform, but yet it was just raised a little bit off the ground, and it was in the woods by a little path, and I could see this rabbit going by. And they said, oh yeah, that was John's favorite spot. No, it wouldn't be a deer stand. You're seeing it correctly. That is his platform he built out in the woods, so he had a place to sit and just be with nature, be with the animals. And then the family had some questions for John, and he had committed suicide, and they wanted to know what was that like, and what happened. They were saying, John, what happened? And all that he showed me was, in an instant, it was like bang, and a big white cloud. And that didn't make sense to me, because you would think, maybe it was an overdose, or he used a gun, or some other way to end his life. But I just shared that with them, and they all burst out crying, and they said, that's it. We know it's him without a doubt, because of the way he chose to end his life. And they didn't go into too many details with me, but they said that's exactly probably the last thing he would have seen was this boom, big white cloud. So that, I wanted to share that story with you. It helped the family, but it really helped me to have more faith in the information that was coming through, to really believe it, because it is true. There was no one else in the world that could have come and given me information that was so specific to what John knew and what his siblings knew. And the last story I want to share is about one of my spirit guides. So when you are talking with someone in spirit, it could be a loved one who's passed, but also we have spirit guides. And when I first kind of heard and learned about this topic or idea of spirit guides, I couldn't quite understand it. And someone explained it to me. It's like, oh, it's like your guardian angel or your fairy godmother. And they said, but it's spirit guides. And in my past 15 years of studying communicating with those in spirit, one of my areas of specialty are the spirit guides, because we all have them, and they support us and guide us, give us those nudges, give us the encouragement that we need as we are going about our experiences here. So for about a year or so, I knew one of my guides was a doctor, but I didn't know many details. And I feel like I didn't pry too much. I thought, oh, he'll tell me when it's time. But I knew, somehow I just knew one of my guides was a doctor. It's not that I'm a doctor, but he's a doctor, and one of the phrases or some information he shared with me was so simple but so insightful. And this is Dr. Barnes, and he said, just as the body has the instinct to breathe, the spirit has the instinct to evolve. And I knew he was a doctor, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And that gave me a big aha. I never had heard that your spirit evolves. I was raised Catholic, and it's kind of how my mom taught me, and going to Catholic classes was, you're here, and then when you die, you get to be you're a spirit again, and you get to go to heaven, and then good things happen. My mom always said, things are here for your lessons, and you get through life here. But what Dr. Barnes was saying is, you're learning, you're growing, evolving. Everything, all your experiences, the good, the bad, the joy, the fun, those are all helping you to evolve and grow. So how I got to know more about Dr. Barnes was, I used to live in Washington, D.C., and by chance, somehow I felt a nudge, and I went to this museum. It's the Museum of Medical History. And I didn't know why. I thought it was interesting, and I went for a little bit, and then that was it. And I thought that was the end of it. 5 years pass, and all of a sudden, this one of my guides, the doctor, he knew I was going back to DC, and he told me, when you go to DC this time, go back to the museum. And I'm like, why? He says, if you go to the museum, you'll know more about me. I'm like, okay. And he said, look for the profile. He still didn't give me his name. He was very subtle about it. And I don't try to pry information out of him. I'm like, okay, I'll look for the profile. And when I got to the Museum of Medical History, there was a special display that they had for a couple months. It was about Abraham Lincoln and Lincoln's assassination, and his doctor, who is Dr. Joseph K. Barnes, and that is one of my guides. That is who he is. And I thought, oh, this is fascinating, because there was a profile, a written piece of paper, a profile of Dr. Barnes, and he's one of the founders of that Museum of Medical History. And then also there's an etching, an old etching print that was a part of the display, and it's a scene of Lincoln's deathbed, and there is Dr. Barnes sitting next to Abraham Lincoln after he was assassinated. And in that picture, Dr. Barnes is sitting in profile. You can only see his profile. I'm like, oh, so I thought this was fascinating. I'm like, now I understand, now I get it. Well, something else happened. So I'm standing there looking at this display case, and all of a sudden I could see Dr. Barnes standing there. It wasn't like a hard physical body, but there was definitely an image of him standing next to the display case. And he just looked at me and said, well, now you know, let's get back to work. And then he was gone. And it was amazing. It was an experience that I think it was given to me in the way that I would be open to it. And I am very curious, and I like mysteries a little bit. So I was like, okay, go to the museum. What am I going to see there? And he gave me some clues. So sometimes when you're getting guidance, or someone in spirit is talking with you, it may not be do A, do B, do C. It may be a little conversation, just like someone else, a grandmother might nudge you, maybe a teacher gave you guidance along the way, but your experience and your connection with the spirits will unfold as it's right for you. And I think one of the things I want to share the most and emphasize is there is no one way, there is no right way to learn to connect with spirits, to be open and hear and have an ongoing relationship with your loved ones who have passed. It is whatever works for you. That is the right way. It's been an amazing past 15 years for me. I've moved from being a CFO, going from 1 + 1 = 2, to really saying, yes, I want to understand, I want to work with spirits, I want to know this greater reality that we're a part of, and to use it and enjoy it and embrace it. Recently, I wrote my first book because I just felt very compelled to do it. In my own family life, I had a sister that was killed by a drunk driver, and I saw the grief and the pain and the anguish my mother went through. And then with my clients, thinking that their loved one is gone forever. And what those in spirit tell me, and from my own personal experiences, I know without a doubt they're not gone. Your relationship doesn't end. And so I wrote my first book, and it is Keep Talking, They Can Hear You. Your relationship doesn't end when your loved one dies. So just be open to what comes. Your experiences are your real experiences, and embrace them and let go of the doubt and see what happens.